All right, good evening. It is 5:31. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so, and please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Chris, please take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Councilmember Myers?
Here.
Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Alby?
Here.
Items on consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 1 on January 7th, 2020, and special meeting number 2 on January 9th, 2020 as presented. Acknowledge December financial statement and payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Purchase of a traffic signal conflict monitor tester for the electrical department. Total net cost $10,980. Purchase 6 galvanized light poles in the amount of $16,464 to replace the city's metal street light poles that are dated and rusting out at the bases. Resolution number 13, 2020, setting February 4th, 2020 as the date of a public hearing for the consideration of the maximum property tax dollars for the city's proposed fiscal year 21 budget. Beer and/or liquor applications for El Rancho Grande at 232 East Main Street, Iowa Liquor and Tobacco at 1021 East Main Street, Hy-Vee Food Store number 1 at 1025 North Quincy Avenue, Fairway Stores Incorporated number 648 at 1325 Albia Road, Dollar General Store number 7179 at 721 North Quincy Avenue, Dollar General Store number 2898 at 921 East Main Street, Recovery Room at 1805 West 2nd Street, The Keg at 622 Church Street with outdoor service area, all applications pending final inspections.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Okay, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So move. Second.
Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Okay, at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Interim Administrator Lazio for his report.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Chief Tony Miller to introduce our award for this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. About a month ago, I told you we'd be back in January to honor a couple guys. On October 8th of 2018, we had that river rescue situation where we lost a boat. We lost a couple guys. We got a couple of guys that didn't get honored, but they deserve the honor. We're going to honor them tonight. I want to call Nate and Jeff up here so we can talk to them. I'm going to tell you, we're going to show a video of what happened that night, and we're going to show some pictures of what happened that night. So you'll see exactly what these guys did. This is the gentleman that was in the river that night, Steve Myers, and this is on about 7:30 at night on a flooded river. This is the start. You can see how many people was here. Jeff's the guy right in the middle with all the rope on him, the carabiners and stuff. And this is how many people it took to help get him out of the river. So next video. This is exactly how this has started. There's the boat. There's the debris that it was hung up on. Jeff, the awesome dude that he is, volunteered to go down there and help this guy get out of the river. Nate was a crane operator with the Canadian Pacific Railroad. We didn't know how we was going to get this guy out of the river, so we got a hold of Canadian Pacific. Nate brought the crane over, operated the crane. Jeff went down in the river, flooded Des Moines River, and helped get Steve out of the river. This is the actual. I was right there. This is the actual video I shot that night of getting him out of the river. This is what the river looked like. It was, like I said, it was a flooded river.
Tom's been on that boat about 3 hours. Tom's been on that boat.
As you guys can see what the water was like that night, Tom had been in the river for approximately 3 hours and he was pretty tired. The next day I went down and took a couple pictures to show the aftermath, exactly what we dealt with that night, the night before. This is one of the boats is hung up. There's what the water looked like the next day after the water had went down. And this next picture is the one you can take a really good look at. You can see the boats on top of it, and bad things could have happened that night. So we're going to honor our guys. I don't think we've ever given a Ottumwa Fire Department life-saving award yet. Nate is going to be the first guy. Like I said, Nate was with Canadian Pacific Railroad, did an outstanding job running the crane to help get him out of here. Thank you very much. Thank you for what you've done that night. Thank you. Our second recipient, Jeff Bach's been with the fire department for a long time. He's a master firefighter. The night that Jeff went down there to help get Tom out of the river, Jeff says, I will go down there. Knowing that what could happen, it didn't happen, but it could have. It was very heroic. I'm not for sure what would have happened if Tom would have fell in the river. We'd had bad things, but Jeff did an outstanding job doing what he did. That.
Thank you both. Thanks for what you do for the city, and thank you, Chief, for leading up such a great group of guys. We appreciate it. Ottumwa's better off for having you all on board.
I'm very fortunate. Like I've said many, many times, I'm very fortunate with the guys we have working just for stuff what Jeff did. He didn't have to do it. He volunteered to do it, knowing that what could happen, that it could have been bad. I can't say enough good things about my guys. All the time I get a chance, I say stuff.
Thank you, and thank you all for what you do for our city.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to introduce Fred Zessinger, Mr. Main Street himself, and have him come up and share with the council some of the facts and kind of a quarterly update. So Fred, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As 2020 starts, we are trying to be a little bit better about coming to council and present, and not only to you, but to the public as well, getting out there and telling our story, and we're doing that in a number of different ways. But to finish up 2019, one of the things we do is an accreditation process to get our national accreditation with the National Main Street. At the end of that process, we always have to report certain numbers to them. So I wanted to go over those with you. And I did give you 2 items beforehand. One was the committee's strategic goals for the year, and then also a little pamphlet that talks about Main Street, and in there as well are some numbers. But I've got some additional numbers that aren't listed there. There are 139 businesses in the Main Street district. And again, our district is from Marion to the west to Jefferson Street on the east, and then from the river to most of the south half of 4th Street. As far as percentages goes, 28.77% are retail businesses, 55.41% are service businesses, and 15.82% are food and beverage businesses. All of those businesses within that district employ 854 full-time employees. And I think as you look at that whole district and how many people work there, it is one of the larger employers in Ottumwa. So along with those 854 employees that work within that district, there are also 270 part-time employees. Currently, we have 26 vacant first floor vacancies, but those vacancy rates are something that I track and also report. So back in 2006, percentage-wise, we had 37.2% vacancy rate on the first floors, and then this past year we were down to 17.8%. The second floors, in 2006, we had a vacancy rate of 65% of all the second floors within that district were vacant. This past year, we're down to 47% vacant. So we made a huge step in that with upper story housing. We have 110 units now downtown. Back in 2006, we had 53. So we had a couple downtown buildings that had apartments, but the majority of those were in the Hotel Ottumwa. In 2019, the assessed value of all of the properties within the district comes to $22,379,257, which is almost a $300,000 increase from 2018. So I think that's good. And really those values that increased were on the buildings that had upper story housing added to them in the last couple of years, or even some of the facades affected those values. And then the monthly reports that I do to the state are the ones mainly listed there in your brochure. But net new jobs since 2006 are 396. So in 2006, there were 396 less people that worked here in downtown Ottumwa. Building projects. Now, several of these could be on the same building. So every time somebody pulls a building permit, it's considered a building project. We've had 254 building projects since 2006. Private dollars invested in those projects. We are currently at $16,791,310. We've had 61 buildings sold since 2006. We actually had 8 sold this last year, and we are at an acquisition cost of $4,019,688. And then this past year, we had 3,064 hours of volunteer time, which brings our grand total from 2006 to 39,405. So I know I get a lot of credit for the things Main Street does, but it's really the volunteers that deserve all the credit on that. We have great volunteers and are always looking for additional volunteers. So that's an invitation to everybody. Back in September, we had done a strategic planning session, actually back when Cass was here in 2017. We felt like it was time to kind of update that. So we had Michael Wegler, who is the state coordinator, come down and do a strategic planning session with us. He met with the committees and also met with the board. And through that planning session, we've kind of got some strategic priorities for the next few years that we're going to be working towards. They are continue working toward organizational efficiency and financial sustainability, which has been a big focus this last year. And we actually have started an endowment campaign as well. Downtown belongs to everybody. And, to keep there's been a lot of great work that's gone on downtown, but with everybody owning downtown, I think it's great that we have started that endowment campaign to kind of maintain that as we move forward. Our second priority is support property owners, businesses, and residents, and then particularly those affected by the streetscape improvements over the last year and this coming year, but helping out businesses in general. We have done a lot of property development, and we're really kind of changing that focus to business development. Strengthen partnerships, activities that make downtown Ottumwa vibrant and active. I think we've done a great job in that in the past, and we want to continue doing those fun activities that bring people down to kind of our town living room. So, and then further efforts to better tell our story. Why I'm here tonight, we were doing several things. We've actually implemented a new website that is actually live. It still needs a little bit of work, but it is awesome. The board has really stepped up and is helping put that together. We're also wanting to do quarterly reports here at City Council. So this will be our first. Hopefully we'll back 3 more times this year. And with the list I gave you tonight, each committee person will then come join me up here and tell us what each committee is working on. We are also trying to implement quarterly newsletters, something that we haven't done. We used to do that in the past, and hopefully we'll get that up and going too. One of the things that came about from our strategic planning session in September was looking at our committees and what the committees were working on. We had an economic vitality committee that was mainly made up of business owners. And it turned out that those business owners were doing a lot of promotional activities. We do Ladies Night Out and several other business promotional activities. So we've left that committee in place. but have built a new committee around economic vitality and helping do a separate part of what economic vitality committees are supposed to do. So that's underway as well. I'd mentioned the endowment that we were doing for the funding streams, as well as just constantly doing sponsorships for our events and just annual campaign raising. Our committee priorities you received tonight with the list that I gave you. Those are kind of our goals for the whole year. Hopefully each one of those activities we went through and did the board priorities, but had the committees look at those priorities to come up with events and whatnot that would help implement those priorities. We are having a volunteer public meeting to kind of unroll that February 28th. We have not decided on the location yet, so be watching our Facebook page and our website for that. But that'll be to kind of unroll this plan and to ask members of the community that want to help participate with an event or an activity. So at this time, I just want to introduce our chairs and some people from our board. And if they would just stand up, a few of them are here in the back. Our board president this year is Bradley Grief. Our vice president is Blair Seams. Our organization chair and treasurer is Claudia Gates. Our economic vitality chair, he is not here tonight, but our new economic vitality chair is AJ Gvok, who works out at Indian Hills. And then our design chair is not here either, Jake McCoy, but Connie Ferguson is here, who sits on the design committee as well. And then we've got two promotions committees now. So we've got a business promotions committee. Tricia Smith is the co-chair of that. And then we have a special events promotions committee too, which is actually going to have several, but the projects that we're working on right now is Colby Strebe. She's unable to be here tonight too. But I just thought I would go through that list of the committee priorities and tell you what was kind of being worked on now. So you have the board priorities there at the top. And if you jump down to the Economic Vitality Committee, obviously forming that committee was our top one priority. And then maintaining our district statistics and updating that website monthly is a high priority as well. And then the really big news that I wanted to kind of talk about was the Main Street Iowa's Open for Business competition, which we have a information meeting on next Tuesday, the 28th, I think that's the right date. But that is a grant opportunity for a business that's been in business for at least 2 years. Could be up to $28,000, but there's only one of those people in the state that will get that amount, but there will be 5 additional people that get a smaller grant for $8,000. And like I said, you don't have to necessarily be a business within the Main Street District right now, but the end goal would be that you would be in the Main Street District. So we are having an information meeting on that next Tuesday, and I think the application will be due to Main Street Ottumwa on March 6th. So coming right up, and then it's another deadline after that. But we can only submit one business from here in Ottumwa. It's the reason we have a local deadline, and then that goes on to the state program. Of course, design committee is really focusing on our upstairs downtown tour, which will be in May. Working hard on kind of the baskets and planners, getting that effort going for the spring. Can't wait for that. And then we had this past year, we had a piano in Canteen Alley that I think was kind of a big success for making downtown an active and vibrant place. And we want to get that going again for this year with a new piano. So that's underway as well. We're also submitting a grant to the Paint Iowa Beautiful, which is due here in the next month. So those are kind of the things that are being worked on right now in that committee. The Business Promotions Committee, of course, is working on 2 events. The big one being Ladies Night Out, and then partnering with the Ottumwa Arts Council, we're working on a paint crawl, which actually happens first. That'll be March 27th, which was a new event last year that we did, where you travel around to 5 different locations and do a paint by number. It was a lot of fun. And then, of course, Ladies Night Out will be in April. Our social promotions committee right now focusing really hard on Central Park Cinema. We decided on 3 dates for the summer in June, July, and August for our free movies in the park. And then work has already begun on the Makers Market for September as well. The organization committee, I mentioned the volunteer recruitment efforts that we'll be doing in February. We're working on that SMID that we implemented a couple years ago. Trying to get that in place, but really trying to get that committee put together right now. And then continue to improve our website, developing our quarterly newsletter. And then another fun thing that we're doing is just kind of developing a downtown speakers group to talk about, the things Main Street are doing to any civic group that needs a speaker, but also to class reunions. So any class reunions that are planning their class reunion this year, feel free to reach out to me. But we do walking tours of downtown, and we try to get them into some of the projects that some of the things inside, like upper story housing. Have a good relationship with our partner, Ottumwa Regional Legacy Foundation. And even though the theater is going through a new development, but that would probably be on a tour as well. We could get people inside that as well. So lots going on downtown. I don't think a lot of times you see what's going on, but there's a lot going on down there. And of course, with Streetscape, we continue to work towards that too. So that's kind of the end of my report, but we'll open it up for questions. And if I don't know the answer, one of these people here behind me probably will. So.
Okay, is there any questions or comments for Fred?
Guess I'll comment.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you for the information. It's always good for the public to see to your point, you don't necessarily see a lot of that going on. So it's actually good to hear it. I just say that I think I probably speak for a lot of people when I say that, thank you to yourself, all the volunteers, and quite frankly, the business owners that are down there. Downtown is substantially different than it was a few years ago because of the efforts of everybody. And I think that we're going to continue to see that flourish over the next few years. And it's going to be something that we can really be proud of. And it's good that we have somebody as hardworking as yourself leading that. You're one of the hardest working people that I've personally seen, and I think that the community is good to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And again, I turn around and give that back to my committee chairs and board. I feel like I've got one of the stronger boards and people that, and I think one of the things that make it so good is that the volunteers actually see a reaction from their actions. They see it happening. We all see it happening. With the improvements, I hear some people say, "Oh, we're spending all that money downtown." But when you look at the assessed values of the properties that are being fixed up, that helps all of us. The taxes are obviously figured off those assessed values. So as long as the tax rollbacks a couple of years ago really hurt us, but I've got the numbers that show that what we're doing is actually increasing those still. So that's always good too. And we can't do our good work without good partners like you guys. So I thank you as well.
Fred, I'd also, not just to double up on what Mark said, I feel the same way he does, but you're also one of the very few organizations that not only receive some city funding, but you also are making efforts to become self-sustainable. And that's not easy to get off the ground, as you well know, and I know, but you're making strides to do that, and that's admirable. And you do have a very good set of volunteers. I see, of course, Connie hiding back there again, and I see you're also trying to recruit some junior volunteers. I see one in the audience back there.
She's going to get so mad at you.
That's always good to see. Not very many committees do that too. So again, thanks for everything you do, the board does, and keeping the public in tune with what's happening downtown through all your Facebook videos. Those are very fun to watch. It's another avenue to keep people informed on what's going on. So hats off to you. Great job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Minister Lazio.
Thank you, Fred. I think sometimes we focus on downtown a lot and we forget that there are other things going on too. So I'm going to call on Zach Simonson, City Planner, to tell us about the Healthy Neighborhoods program. So Zach, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you very much, and thanks to Fred for following up the fireman. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to give an update on the Healthy Neighbors program that we had started last year. We were able to process the last of the files for the folks who had received awards at the end of the year, and so I wanted to update where we were on that. We received 76 applications requesting a total of over $70,000, and we awarded 8 grants totaling $8,000. These were dollar-for-dollar matches up to $1,000 from the city for exterior improvements to homes throughout the community. You can see that we received applications from every neighborhood in the community, which was encouraging. And there are a lot of things that were really successful about this program. There are a couple of notes I want to make as we consider the future of the program. The first is that our application window was very late. We didn't make the decisions until late August on who was getting awards, and that's very late in the building season. I would expect that if we were able to set this program as a priority to pursue again, if we were able to move that application window earlier in the year, we would see even more applications and even more ambitious projects that would take advantage of more time. So of the 7 projects that were completed and approved for reimbursement, or I'm sorry, of the 8 projects that were submitted for reimbursement, 7 completed those projects. There was one project where the owner could not produce receipts. We'll cover that one as we look at the ones case by case. Also, I'll note that when we look at these before and after pictures, all of them show great improvement. Some of them aren't finished yet. The funded project doesn't include all the work that these folks want to do to their homes, and we will keep track of going forward. We'll get even more photos to show the full finished projects. So 217 North Sheridan. This is a older woman that lives by herself. She received a grant to paint her house and her porch. The photo doesn't show it great, but that paint was really faded on the front, and the new paint looks spectacular, and she was very happy to receive that grant. 512 North Adams is a property that received a grant for new siding and new windows. They still have garage siding, the front steps, and some fascia and trim to finish, but they did complete well over $2,000 worth of work and were reimbursed for what they've done and what they'll finish to help them finish what they're going to do. 324 North Jefferson. This is a applicant that sought funding because they had significant structural issues to repair on that front porch. You can kind of see in the before picture that it was sagging quite a bit. They were able to restore the structural integrity of that and also make some soffit and fascia repair. 707 McKinley did get new siding and new stain for that deck. 1401 East Main. This is a home that's getting a significant interior and exterior remodel. Our portion did approve a grant for a new roof on that. There's still new siding. There's already been a couple of new windows, I think, installed that you might be able to see, but there's more new windows to come. I'd also note that inside they've gotten a new furnace and a lot of other stuff into that house. 1619 Mowrey is another project where we awarded funding for new siding. And 729 East Williams also received new siding and guards for the front porch. And this is the one that didn't complete the project this year. 155 North Davis. We'd offered an award for new siding. The owner said that they purchased siding and began that project, but they couldn't produce any receipts for that. And so we weren't able to proceed with making a payment, and they were obviously not able to finish on time. They are still interested in completing the project, and they do say that they have the siding to do it, but that one's not done. So what's next? We have brought to you in the sort of round of CIP proposals, continuing this program, making it annual, moving up that application window, and also doing some more to advertise this program. Last year, we were really happy with what we were able to do, but it was also born in a very rushed way. And we think that with some more support, we would be able to be very successful. Folks told us that they thought this program was very appreciated because we were offering opportunities to folks throughout the community who don't really have any other way of getting a small advantage from the city, something like a grant for working homeowners, that sort of thing. The other thing I'll also note is that we did, in this case, have some portion of that $8,000 was funding from the Legacy Foundation, and we're very thankful for that. We'd hope to continue looking for partners in funding this program as well. So, any questions?
Go ahead.
I think it looks like it was great to see those projects done. Are you considering in the future keeping it broad scoped across the city, or are you thinking of trying to focus on specific neighborhoods to kind of build up more participation in one area to make a bigger visual improvement to one neighborhood?
Right. So when this program was first considered, I know that Andy Morris had taken it from Davenport or Dubuque or somewhere that has a similar program. And in their version, they do focus on neighborhoods. So they would want multiple applicants from the same block or from the same couple blocks at a time, so that there's a really big sort of catalytic impact in a neighborhood at a time as opposed to one house at a time. Only $8,000 made it hard to do that. And we did see, though, that there was an appetite for that. There were a lot of situations where we had 4 neighbors in a row applied together on Williams Street. We had a lot of neighbors who had talked to each other about applying. And we also had some contractors who had sought out folks and used this program. They said, why don't I give you a quote and why don't you put in an application for this grant and see if you get it? And that was kind of encouraging to see as well, because that would work very well with the neighborhood focus. If you hire a contractor to do the siding, maybe they would knock on your neighbor's door or something like that. And so I think that's a direction we could go. We'd kind of look to y'all to set that priority for us. But I think that would be good if we had, the funding to do it.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, Zach. Good
Thank you very
report.
much. And I'm not being rude, but I have class tonight, so I'm going to leave. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zach.
Item number 4 is really more informational. We're going to set a special work session for Tuesday, January 28th. And the purpose of that is to really go through with V&K, the engineering firm that is doing the design work on the CSO project. We call it Phase 8, which is part of our consent decree that was mandated by the EPA. And it's a rather large project with a lot of moving parts. We spent 2.5 hours today working with Waterworks to just talk through some issues, because we're doing sewer separation, sanitary and storm. But as long as we're doing that, we also want to work with our partner, the Waterworks, to get the water mains moved, hopefully from under the middle of the street out into some of the parking or side right away. So it's a very detailed project, and we have a very short window in which to get the plans approved, do the bid letting, and set the public hearing. And I think it's important that the public be aware. This is the project I keep talking about whenever I get a chance. It's the Jefferson Street going up Lakes Branch and all of that area. So it'll be open to the public, and we won't take any action that night, but it is a key major project, going to take a fair amount of city funds to do this. And so we've been meeting with council to give them some background and information, and show them the maps, and looking at funding options. So try to get your calendar squared away for the 28th. We'll do it here in the council chambers like we would do any other work sessions. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tom. All right, this is the point in the meeting where we identify citizens who wish to speak on items on the agenda. If there are those citizens who wish to do so, please pick up a form there on the rail, fill it out with your name and address, and then deliver it to one of our staff members here at the table, and we'll make sure to get it to our city clerk up here, and she'll call you up at the time your item comes up. All right, we'll move on down to departmental recommendations.
Fiscal year 2021 Tier 1 Energy Efficiency Projects Update on Facilities Maintenance Report. Recommendation, receive presentation.
All right, good evening, Dwight.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the last council meeting on January 7th, a facilities maintenance program was presented to the city council that covered most of the city-owned facilities, including the law center. The recommended repairs were presented as a 5-year plan for each facility, with repairs identified as Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3, with Tier 1 listing the most urgent repairs. Councilperson Holly Berg requested a listing of the energy efficiency projects that would be eligible for rebates. So attached in your packet is that listing. These were all the projects that were listed under Tier 1 that would be eligible for rebates from Mid-America or Alliant. Rebates will vary according to the installation, but you can generally expect 20 to 50% of the installation costs. So if you take a look at that energy efficiency list, these are basically all the projects that will pay you back. I do bring to your attention, it does include the law center, which we have no real jurisdiction over. That total amount in there was like $69,500 for energy efficiency projects. And I also call your attention to an item under City Hall, which is HVAC schematic design, $70,000. If you recall, back in 2018, we partnered with Alliant and we hired Michael's Energy, and they took a look at City Hall here, and they came up with 5 HVAC options that can be considered for replacement of the old boiler system here. They gave us initial costs and life cycle costs. And then if you looked in that facilities maintenance program, you would have saw that there was an estimated cost of $1.5 million in there for the HVAC replacement, as well as a $4.5 million estimated cost for remodeling of this facility from top to bottom and inside and out. Now, I've heard people I'd mentioned when they heard those costs that we can build a brand new facility for that amount of money, and I won't argue with that. And I think what we would like to consider doing is setting up a work session where I can bring in all this information and present it to you, and we can take a look at all the different options and try to develop some type of a direction as to which way to go. The boiler, we're going to be able to make it last throughout this winter, maybe next winter, but we're really running out of time with this boiler system. So we have to come up to a decision here fairly soon. So with that 70,000 schematic design project, that wouldn't itself result in a rebate, but it would give us the funds where we could hire a consultant that could take a look at these 5 different options and tell us how it's going to impact the project. For instance, one option would maybe require that the entire building be vacated while that work goes on. Another option, I feel we can do 1 floor at a time. There's another option which I feel we can do a half a floor at a time, so you can move people from one side of the floor to the next and give that to the contractor. So all these are going to have an impact on the operation and the cost. So with that, if I may, I would like to have the council permission to start assembling that information and schedule a work session at the next opportune time. And if you have any questions on these energy efficiency projects, please let me know.
Okay, any questions, comments, any objections to him starting that procedure?
We'll work with Dwight and other staff to get this scheduled. I'd like to get it down past the budget period, though, before we tackle another major issue, so.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Dwight? Okay, thank you,
Very
Dwight,
good,
for the
thank you.
presentation. Appreciate it very much.
Bid report and contract award for the beach renovations Phase 4 RFP 6X drainage improvement, and authorize the mayor pro tem to sign the contract. Recommendation, award the contract to DC Concrete and Construction LLC in the amount of $22,455 and authorize the mayor pro tem to sign the contract.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, good evening, Gene, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Beach Phase 4 RFP 6X includes installing new drainage piping along the north wall of the indoor pool facility, directing storm runoff from the pool roof into the storm sewer system. Also replacing approximately 80 lineal feet of 24-inch deteriorated corrugated metal pipe and replacing with new PVC piping. Work will include installation of reinforced concrete wing wall at storm outlet in the lagoon, Work will start when weather permits and will be completed by May 15th, 2020. Bids were received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on January 15th, 2020 at 2 p.m. The RFP was sent to 3 contractors and advertised on the city's website. 4 bids were received. The low bidder is DC Construction of Dowds, Iowa, in the amount of $22,455. So the total phase 4 costs with this project are now $623,132.17.
Okay, comments, questions for Gene? Okay, seeing none, go ahead and take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Thank you, Gene.
Discussion and presentation of ownership of sewer laterals as previously questioned at 1422 North Elm Street. Recommendation: maintain current policy for ownership and financial responsibility for repair of sewer laterals to city-owned and maintained sewers.
Move the recommendation as presented, if you need that.
Chris, need a second?
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Staff has been directed to review the current practice when private sewer laterals fail at the Y connection on the city-owned sanitary sewer mains. We reached out and had extensive conversations with current and past sewer maintenance supervisors/foremans, which spans a period of time from 1976 to 2020. During this 46-year period, it has always been the homeowner's financial responsibility to maintain the private home sanitary sewer line to the collection system. We reviewed the past 3 years to gain a sense of scope and found that in 2017, we had 4 failures. In 2018, we had 5 failures. And in 2019, we had 7 failures and 1 pending. The cost of repairing a single private lateral is dependent on many factors such as depth, Y condition, contractor selection, and even the time of year. And there's many more factors. In reviewing possible impact of sewer rate structure, if the city assumed the financial responsibility for what is currently a private property owner's responsibility and without actual individual repair cost, we assumed a $10,000 for each repair and an average of 5.5 failures for the past 3 years. So we estimated $55,000 annually. If we project this cost, we'll need to add 1% to the current sewer rates. Staff will be presenting proposed sewer rates for the Phase 8 project on the special meeting held January 28th. Currently, homeowners have the option to purchase HomeServe insurance. Coverage levels depends on the purchase plan. There is a 30-day activation period, and it cannot be a known pre-existing condition to qualify for that insurance. One of the things we wanted to put together is, and maybe the background on this particular one, was when the water main went by, it went by relatively close, probably 3 or 4 feet. When they opened up the pavement, they seen this void, which would be directly over the lateral. And then our crews come out and done some televising of the interior. You can see where the lateral had collapsed and come into the side of the main. You can see kind of a second piece. This is the same packet that I handed out at the last meeting as far as for information. This is just kind of a timeline along with some letters and notices that was sent out. Same thing here. I guess what I really wanted to show you had that. I wanted that we added this. This is just kind of some different type of lateral connections. This is just a saddle that is basically placed on the side. The piece of pipe was cut out and PVC was put in, and these fern cones are put on to make up for the difference of the wall thickness between a PVC and a clay type pile. Just as you come out of the main here and then coming over to connect to the existing lateral. Here's one that, and I don't know how common it is. It is a practice if you can line up and break into a manhole. If you happen to be fortunate enough to line up, you can break a hole in the side, connect in, then color it in. And again, this is just a sewer lateral dropping into the top, same type of lateral system. These are kind of unique because of the bale. There's a couple different systems, but without trying to cut out the actual main and putting in a whole T section or Y. And just one more example. And you can see where this one actually comes out, drops down, then connects into the main. There's no standard for these. When you're putting in a new sewer main, then it becomes kind of standard where we come up, but then almost always, depending on the alignment, there's usually fittings and stuff to get realigned to the existing at some point. Again, this is just a top drop. And you can see some of the stuff that contractors encounter depending on how far they cross. This would be the main connection, probably more of a standard where you want to come in at 10 o'clock and drop into your main. And of course, once you start getting deeper, you're required to have different type of shorings, or you'd have to start removing a lot of pavement. You'd have to bench, and you'd end up with, 4 times the pavement removal. You can see there's quite a few, and I don't know the actual depth without going back. Kind of more of the same. This is one, and sometimes this is why you see some people wonder why it's so expensive. Contractors have to build in case they get into any utilities. You can see some gas, some communications, the water line, all of this in order to get the grade and then head toward the house. And then that's just some spreadsheets of where we track permits. I'd entertain any questions on this?
Okay, are there any questions, Mr. Myers?
Yeah. Well, Larry, and I've asked you some questions on this, but I'm guessing as a resident, getting that insurance is probably a good investment.
Well,
and partly I say that because you've explained, I've asked and you've explained that laterals have never been the responsibility of the city. It's either the developer, or if it's a resident that builds, the lateral going to the sewer is always their responsibility.
Correct. It has never been our responsibility since I started, but I went and I reached back to different foremans, which prior to the supervisors, they were foremans. And the individual that I spoke with was in the sewer department for, I think, 35 years. And then he served outside of that prior to 76. And it had not been to that point. I do want to roll back to the insurance. One of the things when they first offered that, and it was a company that approached Waterworks, and they started sending it out in the billing information. I had a lot of questions when that first come out as to, what do you think? What should we do? Type of stuff. I always recommended to homeowners to take a look in their basement. If they could see a copper line, their water's probably copper, probably pretty good shape. If you had galvanized, I'd consider the insurance. The other thing I recommended, if they had no idea what the condition of their sewer was, it would be a good investment when you purchase a new home or prior to purchase. Have Boytnot or someone come in and shove a camera down it. It's probably $100 to $130. You'd have an idea of what condition that lateral was in, and then you could make good judgment from that point. I also told him in that same conversation that if you looked and you had copper, or you had, a recent home, if it's a recently built home and it's copper and PVC, you probably do not need the insurance.
Yeah. But didn't you also mention, like those the sewer lateral, up until the 60s, that one of the substances that was used, or the pipe, was Orangeburg, which is a tile, and so tree roots and everything else over years?
Orangeburg was a product they used during the war when they were doing drives for metal. That's basically, you just couldn't use the cast. They would put cast under the floor and stub out a couple feet outside the foundation. Orangeburg is really just almost a tar paper with some resin impregnated. I mean, it was really almost a cardboard type line. And it's, most of those they have failed or are in the process.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Berg.
Okay, so I know obviously the property owners who presented at the last council meeting had a lot of questions. Have you been able to discuss those, or your staff discuss, the concerns they had on the timing of it versus when the construction was taking place? Or
I haven't talked directly to them. I had reached out. It took a little bit to get information back. This was a known condition from our staff that had conversations. I haven't talked to them. They were aware of it. They had went out and got, I believe she presented that they had got an original estimate, and then I'm not sure about the timing on insurance, and got a second estimate. And then there was probably some other transaction that happened. As far as filling it, they had to fill it far enough to get their patch back in along the center line. One of the things that I had meant to get in this PowerPoint and I did not was the aerial photo of this.
And because I know one of the questions, I believe, feel free to nod if I'm right, was they had a question on if it was something that was worsened due to it being open from construction. Is that something that could have happened, or?
Well, I'm not sure I could speculate on that. The sewer is about 12 foot deep and the water main went by, I'm going to just say 4 feet away, would have been at about 5.5 feet. That water main wouldn't have caused, the installation of the new water main wouldn't have caused an undermine. That was definitely caused and pre-existed before they pulled the pavement off. That joint would have opened up at some point in the past, and it takes a little bit of time for the material to go down an open joint or a crack. One of the things that we've discussed with several of you individually, one of the problems with the old clay tile is if they installed it with what they call a break-in, which is literally that. They take a hammer and start tapping until they break an opening. Then they kind of shove the pipe in and C-color with concrete. Not the best idea. If you were doing that today, you're going to have to core drill it and then use a regular saddle. But part of that is from what was a common practice back in that time period.
Because, yeah, I understand that we're talking about the policy, but I want to ensure that it wasn't something that was, this was particularly caused by some other incident,
Yeah, I don't know if I could speculate. Can you say that a water main break it was a water main break close enough to cause the flow that found at the opening? You could discuss that. I don't know how you would ever determine that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Larry? Okay, we have a motion and a second to maintain the current policy for ownership and financial responsibility. Go ahead and take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Myers,
Yes.
Councilmember Berg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe,
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes. Thank you, Larry.
Petition filed with the city clerk by Tom L. Johnson requesting the removal of a German Shepherd dog located at 1443 South Ferry Street.
Okay, I'm going to exercise a little preference of the chair here, and due to the seriousness and sensitivity of this issue, before I accept any motions tonight on this issue, we're going to do things a little different here. I'm going to go ahead and call Mr. Tom Johnson up to the podium here, Petitioner Johnson, and have him describe his petition and his situation. And then after he is finished, I will have staff, invite staff up to discuss the issue and address the council at that time. Mr. Johnson, good evening. You have the floor.
Council member, this is Tom Johnson, 1422 South Ferry, Ottumwa, Iowa. I would like to talk to the city council about the city dangerous animal ordinance. On December 1st, 2019, the neighbor's dog bites a mail carrier. The mail carrier is taken to the hospital for stitches. December 2, 2019, I received a letter from the post office stopping my home delivery mail due to the dog attack on the mail carrier. Postmaster says my home delivery mail will not resume if the dog problem is not taken care of. I have two opinions on this dog problem. First, the Ottumwa City Dangerous Animal Ordinance states, no person shall keep or harbor a dangerous animal which has demonstrated without provocation to attack or bite. This dog should be removed from the city. I do have a legal opinion by an attorney that agrees this dog should be removed from the city. Do you want to look at it?
If you want to look at that, you could bring it up here. Have Ms. Keith bring it up there and have us look at that. I do believe we have a copy of that, but I'm not for sure. So,
Is
Yeah,
that the
we all
letter
received
of December 30?
yeah, we did receive a
I
copy
did
of that.
distribute that to all
I
the
believe we
council.
do. Thanks, Johnny.
My second opinion, thank you, ma'am. My second opinion is, as long as this dog problem remains on South Ferry Street, my home delivery mail will not be delivered. Not having the home delivery mail is a nuisance. By section 24-2 of the city code, This nuisance dog should be removed. That's my opinions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
We squared up.
Yes. Okay, at this time, Chief, are you up to give us a little background on this?
I'll go ahead and read my staff summary, I guess.
Sure.
Just so the public knows what it's all about. Ottumwa police officers Craycraft and Williams investigated an incident involving a German Shepherd dog owned by Beth and Andy Ewing of 1443 South Ferry Street in Ottumwa. On December 1st, 2019, the German Shepherd bit a mailman, causing injuries to his face and chest requiring stitches. The dog was not provoked. On the date of the bite, Officer Williams determined that the dog had been restrained inside a kennel. However, the dog was able to utilize a board that had been placed inside the kennel to escape over the kennel fencing. The board has since been removed and the kennel appears capable of properly restraining the dog. The mailman advised he did not want the dog removed from the city or euthanized. The police department has no credible reports of the dog running loose or the dog attacking anyone else. Community Service Officers Williams has been assigned to investigate dog bites occurring within the city for the past 13 years. Officer Williams is certified as an animal control officer by the National Animal Control Association. Officer Williams advised the owners of the dog that the dog could stay in the city as long as the dog remained properly restrained. Officer Williams has advised the owners of the dog that the animal will be removed from the city if the animal bites another person. City Attorney Joni Keith also recommends the dog be allowed to stay in the city. A neighbor, Tom Johnson, wants the dog removed from the city and is requesting the city council order the dog removed. So basically, each types of these incidents, we look at a case by case. I think Mr. Johnson and his attorney would like for us to pass a policy to where if a dog bites anybody, they're considered vicious and needs to be removed from the city. I don't recommend that. I think that we need to look at each one of these instances on a case by case basis, or we're going to have other issues when the little Chihuahua bites someone on the ankle and someone comes in and now we're being mean to the owners and we're not enforcing this with common sense. So our recommendation is to allow the dog to stay inside the city limits. However, that being said, I know that the owners of the dog have gone ahead and relinquished the dog to the Heartland Humane Society, and they are going to try to adopt the dog out, and it will be adopted outside of the city limits. So I don't know how we want to proceed on this.
Chief,
it's kind of a moot point now.
Chief, before we open this up for discussion, I believe we need a motion to do so, but you just said, and I'm repeating what you said, they have given up to the Heartland Humane Society to be adopted outside the city limits.
Yes.
Okay, before further discussion, I guess I would entertain a motion of some sort pending the past actions and the new information we've just received. I guess it's the pleasure of the council to follow the recommendation of the city and or make another motion. I'd open it up to a motion.
I have a question for.
We need to have a motion before we have discussion.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I would make a motion, but again, I agree with Mr. Johnson. I think we should have followed the ordinance and the dog should not be allowed. It concerns me a little bit that the dog's out at Heartland and the intention is that it go to this, that it won't come back. But there's no guarantee of that. And our ordinance says that 24 stitches to the face, that was pretty furious. So
We should have a motion, though, however, to open up
my
for discussion.
recommendation is that I'm not sure how to do this because the staff recommendation is
Can I just throw out there, I think it'd be easy just to say the dog needs to be removed from the city limits and then we'll notify Humane Society, even though they've assured us that they're not going to adopt it to anybody inside the city. I think it'd be easy now just to say, go ahead and order the dog out of the city limits and that'll be it.
Is there a motion?
That is my motion. Thank you, Chief.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to remove the dog from inside the city limits. Is there any more discussion now or questions for the chief? Just trying to follow proper protocol. Okay, seeing none, please take the roll, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, chief.
Mr. Mayor, I would
Yes, sir.
also add that I'll be happy to talk with the postmaster about this and get a little clarification, because I don't believe it's fair to punish the neighbors in that area for
Absolutely.
a one-time situation. So I will follow up on that tomorrow.
That sounds good. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Excuse me, Mayor, point of order. I'm still a little concerned as far as the agenda. Did we address denying that petition?
The motion was to remove the dog from inside city limits. That's the motion you guys made.
Yeah, that was simply a staff recommendation.
So that makes it okay.
Should so,
Thank you.
yes. Yes, please proceed. Sorry, Chris.
Update the Southeast Iowa Response Group 28E agreement. Recommendation: approve the addition of 2 counties, Appanoose and Lucas, to our regional hazmat response team.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Chief Miller, you have the floor.
Thank you. Currently, we have 9 counties that we provide hazmat response. For 2 or 3 years, I've been working with Mike Lamb. Mike Lamb is an emergency management coordinator for Appanoose, Davis, Lucas, and Monroe counties. And I've been dealing with him for a couple of years to try to get these 2 counties to join. And we've done all the paperwork required. Effective July 1st of 2020, both these counties will be joining SERG. And under Paul Zings, SERG's attorney, I got to bring this to the council just to let you guys know that this is pretty much an update for SERG.
Okay, any questions, comments for the chief? Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Resolution number 8, 2020, approving change order number 1 and accepting the work as final and complete, and approving the final pay request for the 2019 Sanitary Utility Access Program. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 8, 2020.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, you have the floor, Larry.
This project replaced sanitary utility access and existing sanitary lines and associated patchwork. Manholes replaced at locations that had either limited access points or problem areas prone to plugging, causing increased cleaning maintenance. Change order 1 increases the contract sum by $4,683.54 for the increase of pavement removal, replacement of unsuitable fill material.
Okay, comments, questions? Pretty standard. Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Resolution number 15, 2020, authorizing the mayor pro tem to execute a pipeline license contract between Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad Company and the city of Ottumwa for preliminary work on CSO Phase 8 Blake's Branch Division 1 project. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 15, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, Larry, you have the floor.
Phase 8 Division 1 sewer separation project requires installation of 1 pipe line, a 30-inch in diameter, inside of a 36-inch steel casing to carry the sanitary sewer across or along Burlington Northern Santa Fe's rail corridor at or near the station of Ottumwa. BNSF permits utility crossings by pipeline license agreements. We were able to increase the original agreement from a 25-year period to a 50-year lease agreement, just with discussions with their attorneys. The fee for processing the agreement is $1,500. The agreement requires the city to provide railroad protective liability insurance or to participate in Burlington Northern Santa Fe's railroad insurance program at a cost of $1,266. Staff recommends that we use Burlington Northern's insurance. It's far cheaper than when you go outside and try to get local. The license shall continue for the period of 50 years. What that means, if they have any type of required relocation for their facilities, it's not really practical. I don't really anticipate that, but that's what it is. So between the two, we have to cut them a check and then send it to them. The permit's good for 1 year for construction. With our letting coming up the 1st of March, we believe that they can get done in that first year.
Okay, any comments or questions for Larry? Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Resolution number 17, 2020, removing a special assessment applied to a vacant lot on North McPherson on resolution number 5, 2008, and rescinding resolution number 2, 2020. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 17, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, good evening, Kevin. You have the floor, finally.
Thank you, Your Honor. The vacant lot on North McPherson, parcel number 007-4135 00016 had two special mowing assessments, one from 2008 and one from 2018. We will, with this action, be rescinding resolution number 2, 2020, because it does appear that the special assessment from 2018 was actually paid prior. So this one that we're doing today will rescind that motion and will bring in the 2008 mowing assessment relief.
Okay, questions? Okay, seeing none, go ahead and take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Resolution number 18, 2020, approving applications for residential and commercial tax abatement under the Urban Revitalization Plan, subject to review with local assessor. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 18, 2020.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a part of our urban revitalization approach in the city. Of course, in I think it was roughly 2016, we made tax abatement citywide, which was a good move. That's for commercial, residential, and industrial. And of course, we have some different schedules there. But this list, and of course, to be able to receive it, you must do improvements that equal 15% or more of your tax assessment as far as an increased value. So our tax assessor does have a big say in which ones of these tax abatements are granted. But this is our list for this year that we'll be sending for review.
It's a good program.
Yes.
Okay, anybody have any questions or comments for Kevin on this issue? Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Resolution number 19, 2020, continue operations at Ottumwa Transit Authority with a fixed route system in the city of Ottumwa. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 19, 2020.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Okay, second. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is anybody going to take this, or are we going to just ask for comments and questions, or?
Well, I sent in your packet a explanation. I think I have no further comments other than I think the fact that Ottumwa Transit did make a good presentation last week, and also have been willing to work with staff on how they can be more sensitive to some of the needs of especially handicapped and paratransit requests. So the only additional comment I would make is that I would want the council to understand that if we approve this, that we will work with Mr. Silverio to be sure that the paratransit is much more effective and flexible, so that we don't have any people complaining to us about not being able to be picked up. And I think Dave and Mary have both been very willing to work with us, and I don't see any reason that we can't accomplish that. So I would stand by the decision that I gave to you and recommend that we continue with the Ottumwa Transit.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead, Bob.
So, okay to make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I was really pleased with her presentation. And I think with that presentation, there were comments that the council would get periodic updates. And maybe that's once a year, maybe it's every 6 months. But then that we could also see a lot of what I thought was a good part of that quality presentation. We can see how it's working, see what the follow-up would be.
Yeah, I thought there was another one in there. Thanks, Kayla. There seems to be another citizen input request form to 1015 Transit Service. And I'll go ahead and call them at this point, and then we'll come back for your comment. So I'll go ahead and call Victoria Centria to comment on this item, and then Councilmember Berg, I'll come back with your comments. Good evening, Victoria. You have the floor.
Okay, I appeal to the councilman and Mr. Mayor to keep this service that is very valuable for the city of Ottumwa. And I'm also speaking on behalf of several other people, one being my grandson who gets bullied on the regular city or school buses, and he uses the 1015 service. Also, I know people that have been able to use it to go to work and back home, and also there is also friends that I have, they're like disabled, and it's much more sustainable for them to use the 1015 service than the city bus or a taxi cab. Also, there is many elderly that don't drive anymore that use this service, and if it's much more convenient for them to use the 1015 than the city bus that goes, to go home, like you had to waste an hour just, to get the transfer and all that. Also, I've used the 1015 myself, and when my car broke down, and I was able to keep my job, and they were very punctual and courteous and very professional. So I hope the city of Ottumwa keeps this service.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Victoria. Appreciate those. Okay, Councilmember Berg.
Yeah, I have a few things. One, I think it's important to clarify for citizens, and maybe you can help clarify our staff on why the change in the current structure with what DOT is saying and why that's come about in the first place, the right on demand, and what DOT is saying about creating a memorandum between the two entities on duplication of services. I think it's important to say to residents again on why that's even a question. It's not something that came from the council directive, to make those changes.
Okay, sure. Well, as you recall, the last meeting, I did report that Councilman Dalby and I did attend a meeting with DOT. It was their direction to the two transit groups that we needed to have a memorandum of understanding between the two organizations. It seems that since we have had a fixed route established here in Ottumwa, that we should not be competing, and certainly they don't want to be double funding two different organizations. So they suggested that we get together and work out a memorandum of understanding. There were some meetings, but nothing was really resolved at that time. And this does not prevent 1015 from still providing some services, but they can't compete with our day-to-day fixed route transportation. And I think the fact that we are now providing more services to logistic care, we will be able to meet more needs. And I think we're talking about getting some different vehicles so that we can certainly help the handicap be much more accessible. It may mean that we have to do something a little different with dispatch and how we handle that, but I think that's certainly doable. So I think the other thing that came into question was I feel strongly that the city should not give up the tax levy at this point and lose control of the entire system. So that's what I talked to several staff people about that. Listened very carefully to the presentation and people on both sides of the issue. I think this is in the best interest of the city of Ottumwa to maintain the Ottumwa Transit Authority.
And I was wondering if maybe I received several comments from especially parents of adult children who use 1015 for ride-on-demand service to like Tenco and other entities, and they had a lot of concerns about them not being able to get to fixed routes and what could happen in the future. So I was wondering if Dave or Mary or somebody, not to put you on the spot, but could give some information on how that could work if it's okay, if you don't mind. Because I think, we obviously want the fixed route service, but there are many people who can't can't do that or don't have the abilities to do that. And there was a lot of questions I received with concerns on how that would go for those residents in the future.
Thank you. I'd be more than glad to answer that.
Oh, yeah.
A few years ago, about the time that 1015 and Ottumwa Transit split, I received a letter from DHS. We tried to get a Medicaid number so we could bill. And we were informed that since we were a small urban transit agency and not a rural agency, we would not be allowed to have that number. So at that time, we had to give up a lot of the TENCO because they were going more and more to Medicaid and medical waiver. That has changed. Basically in the last 6 months, Logisticare has come to us and asked us to get involved. Access to Care has come to us and asked us to get involved. So we can do all those things again. So nobody that has children going to TENCO are going to lose their rides. We're already planning on reinstituting our TENCO route. We'll happily pick them all up. We miss them. But they couldn't pay us to do it, and they shouldn't if they had Medicaid. But that's all changed. So that's where we are at currently. We're expanding. We're getting the funds to expand. And as always with us, we're going to be looking at the disabled, low-income, elderly, because that's supposed to be our job. Granted, everybody needs a ride, but certain individuals need more.
Thank you. And because there was several people I know, both in the audience last time and that had contacted me, were asking about Ride on Demand with 1015 and how that won't be available now. It sounds like within the city limits. There was a lot of concerns from people who maybe don't fit into the paratransit, but maybe still can't do the fixed route system easily.
That's an absolute fact. But this is a whole new deal to us. Mary and I meet almost daily going over future plans. I already had a lot of plans. My answer to them is we're hoping to extend, and I've already got some of the paperwork done, extend the bus routes. So we're going to those areas. We've never done it before. What it's going to require from us is more personnel. We believe we know where they're going to come from. If not, it means that myself and Mary, who are already driving, will be driving more. What I would like to do, provided this proceeds with Ottumwa Transit, have those people call me. My name's Dave Silverio. My phone number is 641-680-1913. That's my cell phone number. Talk to me. Let me see what I can do or what we need to do.
I guess the questions on the Ride on Demand, not just during the day, but those concerns on the holidays and the nights and weekends, I think is something we need to ensure. We have obviously, I work downtown and TLC gets off later than I do, even when I'm leaving late. So I think we have a lot of people who we just need to make sure aren't left out moving forward, and want to make sure that that's ensured.
Right. What we're looking at, we're training young gentlemen now that I think is going to have a lot of potential for us. And we're looking at, instead of a Monday through Friday, like a Tuesday through Sunday, we're already taking the holidays. We started last Monday. I've got people volunteering to do it at a cost, but that's what we need to do right now. It's probably going to take us 30 days to get this gentleman up to speed, trained, fully licensed. He's got everything except his passenger endorsement. And that's what we're approaching him with. And he is more than happy to do it. As I've said, this whole procedure has brought us a lot of things we hadn't looked at before. We didn't need to. Now we do, and we are, and we'll get it done. Just bear with us. It's going to take a little time to get it all up and going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure, Councilmember Rowe.
I want to revisit some of the statements that were made at the last meeting just for clarification, and Councilmember Byrd cleared some of that up. But one of the things that was mentioned last time, and you've alluded to at this point, is the ability to bill Medicaid for rides.
Right.
Just so we're clear, that ability does exist now through.
Absolutely. We're already doing the
1015
rides. We're
or
already
through-
billing.
Okay.
Both access to care and logistic care. Access to care just started 2 days ago. And as logistic care did, they're baby feeding us the rides.
Okay.
Naturally.
So the next two questions, again, going back to the last meeting, 1015 Transit had made the statement that if we decided to go with Ottumwa Transit as opposed to them, that they would essentially leave this market in March. And you just said, bear with us, it's going to take us some time. We're sitting on a month and change now until March 1st. Do you have the time to get all these systems in place? Because not only, the name Tenco got thrown out quite a bit here in the last few minutes, but there are also other facilities in town that rely on transit services for disabilities, for elderly, for low income. You have 45 days basically or 40 days, whatever that number is, to get this in place. Structurally speaking, can you get that in place? Number two, do you have the vehicle fleet to accommodate those additional services?
Yes and yes. We
Okay.
can start that anytime. We've got something down there, and it's called Dave and Mary, Mary and Dave. We will drive 24 hours a day if we need to get this done. We don't
I don't
turn
think
down a
that's
ride.
legal, is it?
Well, depends on who's doing the books.
Not the answer I was hoping for, quite honestly.
No, there's no problem with that. As a matter of fact, I'm driving tomorrow. I drive on a regular basis. What dispatch does, if they don't have an opening, there's a Dave category. And if the Dave category gets filled up, there's a Mary category. And if that all gets filled up, I put my full-time people on routes when they're done. They'll do overtime. We will get it done.
Okay. Well, there are some of us up here that are fairly closely associated with some of these folks that would be affected by this. So I would hope you'd understand if you're going to receive calls, if we do have a gap in service coverage in this. The last thing that I would make mention of, and again, this goes back to the last meeting, the question, I had asked a small series of questions about employees. What would happen if we went with Ottumwa Transit? What would happen if we went with 1015? And just a note to the council members to think about, as one of our responsibilities is also not only to the taxpayers, but to the employees who serve the city of Ottumwa and the job base, making sure that we don't do anything negative for the job base here in a community. And it seems as though if we go with 1020 or 1015, we risk 22 people's employment. If we go with, according to the gentleman from 1015, if we go with Ottumwa Transit, we risk no job loss. So just an important consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilman Myers?
Well, I have another one. Skip, did you? Go ahead. Okay. Well, I just think the points were good, but we also owe a responsibility to taxpayers across the state. And when DOT came and said, we're not going to duplicate, we have a responsibility to the majority. I had a really nice lady call today, and I spoke to Mr. Silverio about it. Her son, she thought, was bullied quite a bit when he was riding Ottumwa Transit. And I told her, did you contact Ottumwa Transit? Did you let them know? And she hadn't. And I said, well, you should. Her other point was, with 1015, she could get a ride to her job at Walmart at 4 a.m. And I complimented her on being willing to work at 4 a.m. But I also said, you know, we can't cover everybody. We can't. And some of the people who spoke last week said that 10:15 couldn't always, even though they thought they could. So we've got something that's working, and I thought your comments were good, so that's it.
Thank you.
I think it also, go ahead, Skip, if you had a.
No, he's good. I think he's okay.
Well,
Go ahead, Skip.
the only thing that I'm concerned with, I've got several calls on how we're going to pick up these people and get them to like the Promise Shop on Church Street, Tenco, and I want to be clear in my mind that that's going to happen. And if I live out the edge of town or wherever, and I need to go to the doctor, that I can call you and get a ride to the doctor.
Yes, you will, and yes, they will. But there's no but about it. Call me. I can't do anything if you don't call me. I gave you my cell phone number. You can get me 24 hours a day. I don't make idle promises.
I know where to find you, so I won't have a problem with that.
I'll buy the coffee.
All I was going to add was I think this gives us an opportunity to let Dave and Mary move ahead with some of the things they've heard and learned from the discussion we've had, and that we as a council need to monitor that and have a report back in the next quarter of what has been accomplished, what the stumbling blocks have been, and what their demands are going to be for personnel and funds. So I think if you vote the recommendation, that should be understood as part of the condition that it will be followed up on.
I spoke to a few of the council members earlier this evening. I intend to start doing a monthly newsletter to the council members. Our failures, our wins, what we need from you, what we need to do for you, a general honest report of what's going on. And as you say, you know a lot of people. I'm sure they'll get to you before I do. But we'll make it happen.
Okay, we're ready to vote.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Okay.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Okay, that looks like that wraps up the resolutions. This is the time in the meeting where anyone who wants to address the council about an item that is not on the agenda, this is your time to do so. So if there's those who want to address something, address the council, something on your mind within the city business, now's the time to step forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on down to item K, petitions and communications. I know Administrator Lazio always has something, so you, sir, have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to make the public aware again that we have our meet and greet for the candidates for the city administrator position. The meet and greet will be 6:30 at Bridgeview Center Friday night. And you're all welcome to come and visit and socialize and ask them questions. Then Saturday morning, we will start here at City Hall at 8:30, and we have three groups. The city council will meet here in the chambers. The city department heads and supervisors will meet on the third floor conference room in engineering. And then the public group will meet downstairs in room 108. And at last count, we had 18 public people who were interested in being a part of that public input group. After the three groups have met and given feedback to the council, we'll then excuse everybody and go into closed session and discuss the candidates and see if there's one that they want to make an offer to, and talk about that. And we'll do that sometime Saturday afternoon. So that's kind of the outline. If you have any questions, Katie's making arrangements if anything comes up. And if weather is an issue, we'll certainly notify everybody through the media. Secondly, I think most of you recall I handed out a sheet that had goals on it for the council, and we really need some feedback from you because we're in the throes of budgeting, and I really want to be able to sit down with our finance department and talk about what are your goals and what can we either postpone or plan for long term, because this year is going to be really tight and we're going to have to really make some tough decisions. So if you have any feedback on your personal or council goals, please give those to me and we'll go accordingly. And then lastly, I'd like to compliment Jeff Hendred. Just does so many good things for this community. And last night we celebrated the Martin Luther King I Have a Dream Day at the First Lutheran Church. And the guest speaker was Isaiah Scales, who is a homegrown local boy who grew up here, graduated from Ottumwa High, graduated from Indian Hills, and then went on and graduated from University of Iowa. He's been working for the past 15 years with Fox Sports, and now it's purchased by Disneyland, so he's now a Disney employee. But I have to tell you, as a elected official, I was extremely proud of the comments he made to the group that was there last night at the church, but he also went to the high school and to the junior high and shared his dream of becoming a video artist and all the things he does with directing. He has 120 some people that report to him for putting these shows together. He showed some of those at the program last night. So I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I think it really addresses some of the diversity that we're dealing with in our community, and I hope that we can continue to have those kinds of young people become our heroes who the students can look up to. So great day, and again, Jeff Hendred gets a pat in the back for all of his hard work to organize that and get that pulled off. And with that, I'll quit.
Okay, any more communications from the council?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilman Myers.
Well, I would like to thank the mayor, and you will not be surprised, but he was part of a video for the Martin Luther King thing yesterday that the United Way and YMCA put together, but always just such a good representative of our city, and thank you, Mayor, for doing that. But then also backing up a couple of days, and Fred Zesiger mentioned it with Main Street, all the wonderful volunteers that we have in this city. So the Ottumwa Symphony, whatever, put on the 25 men that could cook, of which our Councilman Mark Rowe was one, and his stuff was really good. But Bridgeview, again, they not only accommodated the 25 men that could cook, but Friday night they did the singer, Yoakum?
Dwight Yoakam.
Dwight Yoakam. And even with the ice and snow, they had over 1,000 people attend, so they were pleased with that. And then after 25 men that would that cook Saturday, then that evening they still did the Pheasants Forever banquet. So congratulations to them too for doing what we hoped that Bridgeview Center could do, but for all the volunteers that do all these neat things. Thank you. And I want to go with wouldn't be fair not to mention the great job that our street crew did this weekend. You know, when you get snow and ice mixed together, there's not a lot you can do. And they were out working hard Friday night and Saturday morning. And, you know, it's still tough to get around in slippery spots, but they did an outstanding job. And I think we should appreciate the fact that they were ahead of the storm and did the best they could.
Okay, anything else? All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, take the roll, please, Chris.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes. Thanks and good evening. 7:07.
City clerk.